Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today we're going to have a bit of a weekend preview ahead of another week of footy and, of course, SuperCoach. We're going to discuss a few of the talking points, the ins and outs of the teams relevant to SuperCoach, some captain options, and, of course, the take-home message for this weekend. And look, I'll start with the ins and outs, and I must say it's not too bad, really. There's not much happening in SuperCoach world at the moment. I mean, there's a few things to think about that I'll touch on, but honestly, we can probably enter this week fairly happy and probably not a great deal happening on the trade table. But look, some outs. Lincoln McCarthy dropped, which was surprising, as was Comma. Ryan Crowley also out. Trent McKenzie, of course, injured. He's out. George Hewitt probably hurts people the most. His break-even was, I think it was about 29 anyway, something along those lines. And after he scored only 19 points, Jared McVeigh lurking in the scenes was always going to be a potential replacement, and look, he was always on the out when he wasn't playing great sort of footy since round one. He's at an iffy sort of price. He's around that 160,000 mark, and he's not really going to rise his price too much more than that, I wouldn't have thought, let alone try and get back into the side. So I'll probably just wait and see on him. He's probably a guy that once, say someone really starts playing well on that midline bench option, you might look to downgrade him and just get 50k, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. And Josh Gibson, I think it was under a hamstring tightness or something like that, so nothing too bad, nothing too much to worry about, but it will frustrate 14% of people who do have him. Would have been very happy with his 191 the other week, but just one of those frustrating injuries, so he's out. As we look across to the ins column, Daniel Rich is the obvious one. He comes back in, which will be great for a lot of coaches. If people still had Craig Bird, he has come in as well. Daniel Howe, I don't think many people would have had him, but again, I was searching for positives on the ins side of things. And Mason Cox, of course, I'm doing this Thursday night, and there's still the extended bench to look at, but he has been named, and you've got to say, with the way Collingwood's going at the moment, he's got to be a chance. I look at that bench and I think probably Greenwood will be picked, so will Crisp. And then really is as good a chance as most there. I mean, they need goals, they need a tall option, they might look at him. I would have to say Blair is, on the cusp of being dropped. He might get another crack, but he's been poor. Aish has been okay. They may persist with him. McCaffer came in as well. He's a chance to be picked. So, look, Cox, he's got to be a bit of a chance, but I know quite a few people would probably still have him at R3. So, positive signs to see that he is around the mark anyway and should get some games sooner rather than later. But that's all that's happening from a team point of view, so it's not too bad. No real unexpected outs, which, really destroy us. But then again, no big ins. Of course, Rockcliffe will miss again. Brad Crouch is out for 2 to 3 weeks. And that brings me to the talking point of Brad Crouch. And what do you do with him? Well, to be honest, what can we do with him is the question. I mean, he's at, 306,000. Rookies haven't made enough cash yet, really, to downgrade and upgrade him to someone. There's no one really around that price range. I know Pollock is there. He had a good week on the weekend, but I wouldn't be picking him with any real assurity. To be honest, I'll be keeping him unless I hear wind of anything much worse than the 2 to 3. And they're going to be cautious with him because of his injury history, which is frustrating. So it could be that 3 weeks. But our hands are pretty much tied. I mean, what can we do with the bloke? He's priced awkwardly. He is priced at a bargain price for what he can produce, but he's starting to backfire right now. But, I mean, there's no one really shouting out and screaming out to downgrade to. There's no one within 200k that you'd really upgrade to. You really need another 260, 70, 80,000 to really get up there. And we just don't have that cash generation at this point in time. I mean, if he starts to get worse and, in 2 weeks he's still not named and a few rookies have pumped up in price, then you might think about it and, someone's dropped a little bit from premium price. But at the moment, I say sit on your hands and just chill out. So, another talking point, Matthew Leuenberger. Exact opposite thoughts in this one. Don't sit on your hands at all for him. Matty has got to go. I'm sick of him. He's destroyed me. He keeps playing okay, and he's doing an okay job as a footballer. I think from an Essendon point of view, you'd be relatively happy with him, and you'd be patient with him because he's showing the signs of getting back to what he could produce. But at the moment, he's still producing shocking scores. I mean, I watched the game Friday night against Port Adelaide and he beat Lobie. He was pretty good. He had 33 hitouts and, had plenty of opportunities to take more marks than he did, and he fumbled a little bit. He still only scored 63 or whatever it was. It might have even been less. Really disappointing, which says to me that I think he gave away 4 free kicks, which obviously hurt him, but he went down in price. And not only that, he went down, but Goldstein's gone 172. So as far as that plan has gone, it's absolutely backfired. We're not going to get any closer to Goldstein. And Leuenberger, I think his break-even 68. He's just going nowhere. I mean, I could handle a couple of lower scores early, but 3 weeks in and he hasn't really broken 65. You just can't stay patient enough, especially when he was put in most reporters' bests against Port Adelaide. So he obviously played a good game, but he still couldn't produce high scores. So he's got to go. I think if you do have cash in the bank, which a lot of people should off the back of Barlow being traded out, and Rockcliffe as well would have been culled by a few people, you should have some money in the bank. Of course I would endorse bringing in Goldstein, but he's a long, long way away. And if you assess your other trade options, that is a lot of cash to go from one bloke. I mean, let's do the quick sums. I did it during the week, 286, something like that. I can't remember what Goldie's priced out the top of my head, but that's a heavy knock. I mean, here's my counter argument is Nick Nat. He's still priced pretty reasonable and he'll save you 130,000. I'd be tempted to go for Nick Nat. I'm not yet sold on what I'll do. I need to get the old pen and paper out and look how I can bring in Heath Shaw and how am I going to bring in, Dangerfield, etc. Look a few weeks down the track. This will be a decision completely dependent on how your team is lined up and who you've targeted to bring in. But if you love Goldie, you want him, you don't want to lose any points, lock him in. But the counter argument to that is that I honestly believe Nick Nat could average 115. If not, it'll be 110. Goldstein, I know he was 172 on the weekend, but I'd probably see him averaging more around that 120, 125. Now, if you don't want to lose 10 points a week, which, yes, I know that'll be about 200 points over the season, but it's not deadly. Where you save that 130k, which is another upgrade target. It's almost like get Goldstein in and you spend the majority of your cash and then you got to upgrade again. Or you go Nick Nat and you don't have to upgrade as badly. You might be able to go Marcus Adams to a Heath Shaw in a few weeks, presuming Adams will probably drop off with that scoring that he's been doing. It's unbelievable. You would imagine they'll drop off at some point. Then you might look at a Nick Nat and save some cash. It's a decision I still got to think about, but I'm slightly leaning towards Nick Nat for what it's worth. But they're my 2 talking points. I think they're the main players we'll be looking at from a trade perspective. There's no real players screaming out to pick it because my main take-home message, we'll go to the take-home message now, is that just stay cool. Just chill the jets, calm down. You shouldn't be doing too much this week. Maybe one trade, but nothing drastic, because last week was the time to pounce on anything before the price has changed. I mean, there's not too much else happening. I think we should be relatively set, and any decisions that we wanted to make, we would have made them last week. One decision you might still want to make is on Michael Hartley or Tom Ruggles. So that is one interesting point. They're 2 guys that are looking decent, I suppose. But equally, their job security can be questionable. Also worth a note, Tom Lee came into St Kilda's lineup. He, of course, is at 123k in the defence. Could be an option later, but I think he probably more so got a game because Robertson went out with a knee. But these are my 2 focus men, Hartley and Ruggles. I myself have Oscar McDonald, who wasn't brought in the side. I have him on the bench. So for me, maybe it's a little more relevant. But if you are looking for someone, or you've got a non-playing backman, and you're thinking, gee, I want to generate some cash, do I go Hartley this week? Do I wait on Ruggles? Well, here's my thoughts on both of them. Hartley, I think he's got relative job security. What I don't like is that Nathan Grime has been in the headlines. He's been getting fitter, in chance for a bit of a call-up. Hartley could be dropped for him. He wasn't overly impressive on Friday. And furthermore to that, I know he scored 86 first round, or first up, but you would have to say his scoring output isn't going to be as good as, say, a Ruggles. Now, I think 53 is probably more what we'll get. He is largely a stopper, so we're probably going to expect more numbers in the 50s and 60s and 70s, sort of your Nathan Brand style of last year. As we look over to Tom Ruggles, me being a Geelong man, I feel I can give pretty good insight here, and I think his job security is very good. Not without its, problems, of course, but he was great on the weekend. He really was. He looked very solid, looked very impressive, a nice user of it, and as all Geelong supporters will know, we need a player like him to stop the small forwards, opposition small forwards, because that's been a real problem area of the Cats for some time. Everyone talks about our talls week after week, but our big problem, or one of the biggest at least, is that we don't have a classy small defender who can shut down a Rioli. Enright's getting a bit slower these days, etc. So, look, Collar Jasny was dropped, which took me by surprise, obviously probably for Lonergan. And Enright was out. Now, does that mean when Enright comes back, Ruggles goes out? Well, that's a tricky situation, and it's possible. I'd be holding off on the trigger, as I said. I wouldn't be going for either of these guys at the moment. I'm going to let the Hartley ship sail, because McDonald, I think, will come back in. And I'm just not sold on Hartley job security or scoring-wise. And nor am I on Ruggles. I'm slightly more pleased with Ruggles because of his size and nature of the game he plays, and the fact that he was very impressive, and I think will hold his spot even when Enright comes back in. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'll probably make that call in a week, of course. Ruggles is slightly cheaper as well, so whether that 15k here or there might edge you with one way or another. But anyway, food for thought there. I'll just touch off on 12 minutes. I really can talk, that's for sure. But captains, I'll round this one up nice and quickly. There's a few things you got to think about. Of course, I'm not going to tell you Ablett, Fife, Dangerfield. We all know that. Something a bit different. Maybe it's not different. But Goldstein after 172, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? He's playing Sunday. Surely you would look to Loophole and Ablett or a Dangerfield or something like that. Of course, no Sandilands. Goldstein could dominate once again. Now, how are we going to use that loophole? If you have a Petrarca, then that's all good. If you have a 0 with Hewitt, then that's probably all good as well. But, of course, if you're lucky enough to have all playing and your ruck 3 is your only donut, well, if Cox or Wyatt is your ruck 3, of course that's irrelevant if Cox gets named, but you can pretty much do anything because the Pies play at 3:20 on a Sunday. Pretty flexible. If you got Lorch, like myself, the Gold Coast man, well, they play, I think, on the Saturday afternoon game. You can certainly loophole a Paddy Dangerfield early in the day or something like that, as the Cats play early on the Saturday. But Sam Grimley might also be quite popular. Now he, of course, as I just said, playing the Cats Saturday Arvo, I think it's about 1:45. The only option you have then is the Friday if you're going to use Sammy Grimley as your loophole. Now, then you might look at a Pritis, a Nick Nat, a Dustin Martin. They're probably your main options. Of those, you just can't go past Pritis. He's in unbelievable form. And Dustin Martin, I mean, he's capable of big ones, but his form quite hasn't produced, nor has Richmond. So, of those three guys, you'd probably go Pritis over Nick Nat over Martin. So, bear in mind, Hampson has been good, but you'd think Nick Nat would probably dominate him. So, they're my thoughts. A bit of a wrap-up for the week. Of course, as promised, there's always going to be a second video later in the week, which this one is. So we'll always have a look at the week coming up and trade options, talking points of the week. We'll do a take-home message, and I might touch on the captains from time to time. All depends on the week, but thanks for sticking around. Hope you've listened to it all. I appreciate the feedback and the comments. Give the video a like as well if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. All the best, SuperCoach wise, for the weekend, and hopefully I'm in a better mood for my press conference. See you guys.